Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing well, and hopefully the country will survive this next week or part of a week and have an election, and everybody will walk away peacefully, and no arguments. All the arguments we settled, we did it by democracy, and no interfere in any election anywhere. You know, it's just going to be a fair shot, and everybody will be reassured. And I think everybody knows I'm a bit facetious on that, but there were some interesting things happening now in the campaign, really. But Biden got himself into a little problem because he started using nasty words like people. Voters are garbage. That doesn't sound like a good politician, but he's not on the ballot. They canned him. Maybe he's sick and tired of it. Maybe the people who canned him are really the garbage, for all we know. So anyway, he was pretty annoyed, and the people he claimed the people that supported Trump, essentially they're his voters. They were people of garbage, and I think. That sounds like it's a little stronger than being just deplorable.
A little bit,
You know, the whole thing is, I keep thinking of the statement, garbage in, garbage out. Maybe when all the garbage floats to Washington, you know, the influence in Washington, even though we know a lot of good people and very sincere people trying to do their best, but the people who, you know, get the big chairmanships and have the money, part of the deep state, and make the rich richer and all this kind of stuff. There's it's unfair in a way because they have more clout than the rest of the country. But people are sick and tired of it, and they are getting annoyed. So when this came up, he had to be on the defensive, but even Kamala had to get a little bit, get her bit in, and I thought she had an interesting statement about that. I'm going to mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, put up that first clip. Now, this is what she said. I did listen to her statement. I expected to be able to use a clip and make her sound like a goofball. She actually did a pretty good job, and she says, "I strongly disagree." Harris distances herself from Biden's garbage comment. Well, I'll give a little bit of the backdrop to this whole kind of like brouhaha, tempest in a teapot. And you were right when we started talking about it this morning. You said, well, I guess there are no other problems in the world. But, you know, there was this comedian, Tony Hinchcliffe. He made a joke at this big Madison Square Garden rally. He made a joke about Puerto Rico's landfill problem, okay? And he said, it's a floating island of garbage. And it was probably not very nice. It probably wasn't very smart to have him say that there because it didn't make Puerto Rico sound very good. They do have a problem with their garbage, but that's a different issue. So he made that joke, and then someone asked Biden, well, what do you think about this joke? And in fact, we have our earpieces, we have Biden's reaction, the short little reaction to this, if we can cue that up. What Biden said about this joke.
Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable.
He says the only garbage I see out there is his supporters.
The Puerto Rican.
But here's the important. Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but here's the important part. I think if you go to that clip that's next to it, the media immediately covered it up, and they said this is what Politico did. They did the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. They put an apostrophe, so that implies that he's only talking about this one comedian, but anyone who can hear it says the only garbage is his supporters.
Yeah.
You know, so there's the media.
Oh, that's shocking to know they would do such a thing.
How could they do that?
But you know, maybe Kamala hasn't felt too bad about this because one of her best criticisms, or the most important criticism, she doesn't have a mind of her own.
Yeah.
Well, anything Biden has done, I should endorse everything. Yeah. Nothing. What would I do differently? Nothing. I do it. But all of a sudden, she had to come out and you had the statement. It's partial, pretty good statement.
Yeah.
It said that she says, "I disagree with this," which was the first time.
Yeah.
So who knows? It might even backfire on Biden if he was trying to cause trouble.
Well, here's something for our viewers then. Who benefited most for this? Did it help Trump more, or did it help Kamala more to say, I can finally distance myself from this old guy? I wonder. Let us know what you think.
Well, I have an opinion.
Okay.
It's not going to help either one because it's all over. The campaign's over, and nobody's going to switch their vote now.
probably right,
It's all
yeah.
a game. It's all entertainment, and unfortunately, most campaigns end up like this.
Yeah.
Even though there's trillions of dollars involved and a lot of hatred passed back and forth. But I think now, there will be somebody that will claim to win it, but they just go back and forth, and it serves the interest of most of the politicians, especially right now, the ones that are trying to build up the hatred toward Trump, is that they're saying that he's so bad that he should be defeated, and they've turned it into hatred, and it to me is part of that, and they do this mainly because they don't want to, especially the people now who are on the wrong side of more issues than the other side. They don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So this game they play back and forth. Well, I won't have to let some jerk come along here and knows about how we steal from them with the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
We're not going to have them pestering us, and maybe Vance will help us out on that someday.
Yeah, maybe he will. But I liked how earlier you mentioned politicians in this garbage issue, because my first thought when this came out is this is actually exposing what politicians really think about their constituents and their voting people.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of garbage. But so anyway, it didn't end there. So Trump tried to take advantage of it. I think he did an okay job. Now this is a really short clip, so put that next video clip on, and full screen it before we start playing it. This is Trump's reaction.
Remember Hillary, she said deplorable, and then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable. That didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right?
Garbage is worse.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. So put on that, speaking of Vance, put on the J.D. Vance tweet, or post on X, I should say. I'm sounding old-fashioned. So what J.D. Vance said is he also mentioned how Politico covered for him. They added that apostrophe, and J.D. Vance says, does Politico have an ounce of integrity? Why won't they correct this falsehood? Because what they did is they reported it this way. Biden, in a Zoom call with the organization Vote Latino, said the only garbage was the hatred of Trump supporters. That's not what he said. So they purposefully misquoted him so as to not make Biden look bad. It just reinforces what we talked about yesterday. Everyone hates the media because they're so bad.
Yeah, and it confirms it. It doesn't really change. People who knew that this stuff goes on, they say, yeah, that's what we've been saying, what we've been saying. No, and the other side, they keep doing it. I think history and political talk eventually will show all the things that they've done for, a year or two, or maybe all the way back till 16, all the things that they did, they will destroy this guy.
Yeah.
And we do our share of picking at the policies that we don't like.
Yeah.
But they thought they could destroy him. Oh, he's so bad, we're going to impeach him. Not many people get impeached.
Yeah.
What? We could impeach him twice? Yeah. Oh, we'll destroy that. We're going to bankrupt him. We're going to send the guy out there, and no, that's not right. Yeah. Somebody takes a pop shot, and nothing seems to faze them. It's pretty amazing.
It's nasty. It's really nasty.
He's able to turn almost all this stuff around.
Hopefully it's a wake-up call for Americans, too.
Yeah, I think the people are waking up.
Yeah, I think so, too. Well, we'll see. I mean, it's just kind of a diversion, but it's worth talking about. I think it was kind of interesting. But unfortunately, now we have to move on to things that are not as jokeable. And this is our good friend Kyle Anzalone over at the Libertarian Institute had a piece out that I actually did find a little bit shocking. I didn't realize this. I know that we give a lot of money. Put that next clip up. This is from the Libertarian Institute. The U.S. is funding 70% of Israel's war. 70%. I thought we were low on money. Well, go to the next one. It's actually citing an Israeli outfit. A new report by the Israeli outlet Calculist reviewed Israeli military spending on war since October 7th, finding that Washington is funding 70% of Tel Aviv's military costs. In a little over a year, the U.S. provided Israel with more than $20 billion in military aid. This is the report that that this publication came out with. Quote, the scope of American aid since the beginning of the war is about 85 billion shekels. According to official estimates by the Bank of Israel, the total cost of the war is approximately 118 billion shekels. It concludes, quote, therefore, according to simple calculation, Americans financed about 70% of the war effort. And this is interesting. According to the Cost of War Project, the U.S. has given Israel $22.57 billion in military aid since the Hamas attack. Calculus, which is the Israeli outlet, concludes that without U.S. support, Tel Aviv's war would simply be unaffordable. So it's us funding this war.
You know, the last couple of days, I wanted to make the point that people should ask a couple questions before the money is spent like this. And the first question is, where do they have the authority to do this?
Yeah.
And the other is, where are they going to get the money? And but they don't ask those questions. But we can ask this question right now. They didn't have the authority, but who's the biggest beneficiary, and who really is paying it, and what rules did they break? Well, the people, and who are they? Are they people? Are they foreigners that we don't have any control of? No, we're talking about this money coming out of the pockets of our people here, and there's a lot of people suffering in this country, and yet they go and the costs keep going up, and it's related. So it's a little bit late to ask the question: where did they get the authority? Because they had none. No constitutional authority. And where did they get the money? Well, they didn't have to, so they had to steal it or counterfeit it. And if they were forced to answer that, but nobody's, how many times would they be asked to do that? And, I think those two questions could apply to both parties.
Yeah. Well, there's been lots of criticism of Israel over its conduct of this war, and I think anyone with a conscience would be highly critical of what you see happening to women and children. There's just no way around it, and I think it's gone outside of traditional circles now. It's not just the far left identifying with Palestine. There are a lot of moral people, a lot of Christian people who are upset with it. Nevertheless, what is not enough discussed, I think, is this aspect. And put on this next clip. Yeah, we can be mad at what Israel's doing. It's behaving terribly. But we're giving them all of the weapons and all of the money. So this is from Kyle's report. There's no doubt without the American aid, the government deficit for the years 24 and 25, this is Israel's deficit, which is one of the highest in the country's history, would have increased by about 4.3% of GDP, which would have made it unfinanceable. This is from that report, the Israeli report. That Israeli report concludes, therefore, it is doubtful whether this war could have been conducted as it is, neither in intensity nor in scope, without the American assistance. And I think Americans should be furious, number one, and the people who promoted this should bow their heads in shame.
I think there's no doubt about that, that these wars wouldn't happen. Do you think we'd be in Ukraine if if NATO didn't exist and we weren't in there and we didn't finance it and we didn't participate in a coup and take sides before the war started? No, there's no doubt in my mind, but that's maybe just a casual personal opinion, but I think more Americans are sick and tired of it all because, in spite of the shortcomings of the internet, people are getting information and the internet does help us. But we have to work hard, at least I have to work hard to figure out which ones we should, give more respect to and believe, because we're going to see a lot of other just these things we were talking about here. There's two sides of this whole thing. Who said what? You mean they changed words in a report, and that's supposed to be what we rely on? But there are people out there doing it, checking it. And I think it's the integrity. The way I look at it, and I am sure you pay a lot of attention to that, it's the integrity of the reporter, the journalist. And it's easy to keep track of them because there's not a whole lot of them. Yeah. But they're helpful. Once we can get them where for all intents and purposes, they do report the truth in the best ability they can, and it's been helpful. So we need to encourage, more of that type of reporting.
And I think this just demonstrates the moral and practical superiority of the non-interventionist position, right? Because we don't have to take sides. If the U.S. was not involved in financing and promoting either of these wars, they would not have happened, or they would not have happened in the way that they're happening, which is with extreme deadliness, extreme murder of the civilian population. That's why, even the realists who are kind of our distant cousins, they still don't get it because they still think we should be doing stuff. The non-interventionist perspective is the superior in all ways.
If you talk about Middle East money and all these wars going on here, and I've even expressed this to you. The one thing is we're not anti anybody. We don't have to be.
We don't have to be.
We can be, and at times I have, said, well, Israel has the right to do this and they should do it. But the whole thing is you don't have to try to solve that problem by saying only we need to teach Israel a lesson. But all we have to do is say, why don't we have a pro-American non-interventionist foreign policy, and that will take care of itself. We don't have to be anti and oppose somebody that there will be a lot of controversy, but there should be no controversy. But I think we're in a way reaching for this America First type thing. But I think what we're talking about is a little bit more sophisticated about it, because they're willing to use other tools of sanctions and tariffs and things like that we don't exactly agree with.
Yeah. Well, I want to just get in a quote from our good friend and board member, Representative John Duncan Jr., who's retired now, but he put out a great article today that we reprinted at ronpaulinstitute.org if you want to read the whole article. I just got an excerpt. This is pretty powerful writing, because this is what I was talking about earlier, Dr. Paul. People who would not traditionally get involved in that, in him specifically, but are now speaking out. So put this next one on. This is, I think, a very powerful couple of paragraphs, and it's a very, very good lesson for conservatives in America. So Representative John Duncan, a very conservative representative from Tennessee, when he was in, he said, most of the victims of these Israeli and U.S. financed bombs have been women and children. If so many thousands of little children were being killed by these bombing raids in any other country, there would have been such a rush by members of Congress to condemn it that it would have been hard to get out of the way of the stampede. However, all members of Congress know they can criticize any other country, even their own, but not Israel. Sadly, re-election comes before country to most members of Congress, so they know they have to jump at Israel's beck and call. That's a pretty strong statement from John Duncan.
We were good friends, and he voted against the wars. He was one of 6 Republicans that voted against going into Bush's wars. And but what I liked about him is he made me feel at home, because neither he nor I would claim that, boy, we were sophisticated with the computer and all this, and I use the computer a lot more than I used to. But I've seen him do it, because he carried his yellow pad along, and that's where a lot of my stuff started. We, wrote it out, and he used that, especially if we had a short speech to give. I saw him frequently do this. So he doesn't have somebody manufacturing his stuff, and I'm sure he uses his yellow pad still.
Yeah, I bet he does. He does, and it's great to see him writing some great articles, continuing to write some great articles, and I'm glad that we're able to reprint them. Well, if you want to move on now to North Korea and do a little update. This is something we talked about yesterday. It kind of tracks with our predictions. Put that next one up. This is from Zero Hedge. Pentagon warns no limits on Ukraine support if North Korea joins the war. The United States is warning that it is ready to escalate NATO involvement in Ukraine if North Korean troops join Russia's war in Ukraine.
I didn't know the Pentagon was a legislative body. It sounds like they're a lobbying body representing a few companies. So there's a Pentagon war. But I think this is just terrible what they're doing with these financing. And this is an expansion of it. But why if I want to ask those questions to the legislators, where are they getting the money? And where are they getting the money and the authority? We ought to ask the Pentagon. They're not the ones who are supposed to. One of the presidential debates, they kept talking about, we couldn't do that. We have to ask the general whether we should do this. No, I think the elected leaders are supposed to handle that, and the Congress is supposed to handle that. That's why the people were supposed to have a say-so on when the wars are going to start, and then that message would be carried through with a vote by the Congress. But here it starts with the people who own the weapons, promote the weapons, and make big decisions on which weapons are going to be used and which companies are going to be used. So I see the process as not good. And they say, you don't care about national defense. Well, tell you what, when push comes to shove, I think people are going to realize that a non-interventionist foreign policy is probably one of the safest ways to protect liberty. And they say, you'd give up and you'd surrender. But I'll tell you what, if we stick to our guns to non-aggression and non-intervention, I'll tell you what, I think the American people, because the first thing is it would help our finances. And we may come down because of our finances as much as because somebody invaded us. And unfortunately, we might have both happen to us.
Well, this whole thing about North Korean troops in Russia, we've gone over it several times, but I think this latest New York Times article just reinforces the idea that they are looking for a pretext for NATO to get in further. And they know the time is running out. They know that if Trump wins, there will be a very quick closure to this. Not as quick as Trump probably says, but I think it will signal to Congress, hey, we're done. We're done with the funding of this. So they're looking for a pretext to get us sucked in so we can't get out, you know.
Oh, they've been working on that.
So this is the latest thing. We can send all of our troops, and as we mentioned yesterday, a couple of Americans were killed trying to enter Russia in Ukrainian military uniforms yesterday. If that happened to us, we'd be angry. So the U.S. can send, NATO can send in troops in Ukraine, all these things. But if Russia has North Korean troops in Russia, then that is a pretext for us to get more involved. It's like they're looking for some reason.
Well, as long as we don't do stuff like that, we have a right to. Oh, you say we do things like that? How many places do we have troops where we shouldn't have them? A few.
Well, the other thing is the information. Now, the information on these troops being there, no one has seen confirming data, and no one has seen a picture of North Korean troops there. The information comes from Ukrainian sources and South Korean forces. Now, you tell me that both of those countries don't have an incentive to magnify the malignancy of North Korea. That's what they want.
Yeah, and I mentioned that yesterday is that this could be a propaganda stunt to show that, the Ukrainians now really need some help. Maybe we haven't given them enough weapons and bombs, but they don't need any more. And once again, if we quit funding it, people will be forced, whether it's the Middle East or Ukraine or Europe or Korea or wherever, if they don't have this artificial pressure by the military-industrial complex, which is more than just our military, because I think I'm beginning to believe that even the building of weapons, they share these things. You've heard the one, I think it was the B-35 or something. There's parts in every state being made, but maybe they do that to give some countries part of the action too, and share it, and that makes everybody complicit in what they're doing.
By design, absolutely. Well, here's an example of this, just on this topic, of the schizophrenia of Western media and Western politicians. Now, this is from that same Zero Hedge article that we both read. Put that up, that next clip up here. So it says, the deepening, now this is Mark Rutte, this is the new Secretary General of NATO. He says, the deepening military cooperation between Russia and North Korea is a threat both to the Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security, he said. The deployment of North Korean troops to Kursk is also a sign of Putin's growing desperation. So here he is pushing the line that Russia's about to collapse. Russia is desperate. They don't have any troops left. But then you turn to the New York Times the same day, put that next one up, and you get this. With limited options, Zelensky seeks a path forward to Ukraine. Subtitle: A muted response to Ukraine's victory plan and steep challenges on the battlefield leave Kiev struggling, searching for a plan B. So which is it? Is it Mark Rutte, the Russians are desperate, or is it the New York Times, the Russians are winning?
And what are they going to do when they need plan C?
Yeah, or D, whatever. So,
Pretty disgusting.
corruption. So anyway, I guess we've about exhausted our options
we go.
here. I did want to just say one thing. For those people, we talked about North Korea a lot these past few days. For those people who are subscribers to the Ron Paul Institute, and it is free, I will tell you to subscribe, and we do not share your name. Put on that last clip. If you are subscribers, you would have known beforehand. You would have known, in fact, on October 24th, that something big was happening with the North Korea narrative, because I wrote this article as an exclusive to our subscribers. The Kims are coming, and it was all about this. So I have already included a link in the description here to subscribe for free to updates from the Ron Paul Institute. They do not come all the time. Don't worry, we don't clog your inbox, but we do want to bring you some information, and also we will bring you the clips from all the things we've published during the week. So go ahead and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. You'll keep in touch.
We're very good. And he wants to do what I do every day, and that is acknowledge and thank our viewers and our supporters, because that's what we depend on. And we do this with an effort to believing ourselves that we promote, and to the best of our ability, the truth of what's happening in the world, because it is very, very difficult to find sources that you can trust. That doesn't mean those sources will ever be perfect, or what we say or what others do, but I tell you what, the majority of the nonsense that comes out of Washington is motivated for pure political propaganda purposes, and that's usually related to political power and money. So that doesn't surprise most Americans, but they're getting a little bit worried now because the recognition that the moral and financial bankruptcy of this country is coming to a head. And when that comes, we're going to have to make a lot of decisions about which way we're going to go. So when there's chaos in the street, and chaos sometimes is intended by cultural Marxists because they want to pick up the pieces, and that's in their scheme, in their plan. But at the same time, I don't think we can wave a wand and all of a sudden cancel that effort out. But eventually, though, there is and continues to be, and there's opportunities right now for us to promote what would be an alternative to this corporatist type of system that we have, in the bankruptcy and a foolish foreign policy. It's failing, and there's an alternative to it. And the American tradition and our Constitution offers a lot of good advice on how we could avoid this coming mess that we're moving toward. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Come back soon.